This time on The Brothers Mysterium.
Our very first fresh on the scene overnight ghost tour.
Amongst many of the ghosts that are supposedly in that house are these dead children.
I don't believe in actual paranormal experiences.
My two friends, Meaghan and Christina, they decide they want to go up to the attic and they want to go exploring the house.
And the doorknob is like rattling. Like I can see it rattling.
Hello?
Is somebody here?
Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Hello and welcome to The Brothers Mysterium. I am Tommy. He is Eric.
Heyo.
We are The Brothers Mysterium, and we are coming at you with the best, the number one rated and ranked paranormal podcast in the planet.
In the planet.
Not on it, baby.
We're in it.
In the core, in it like magma, as ranked by you, the listeners, who have rated and reviewed us on whatever podcast provider you use and given us likes on Facebook.com/The Brothers Mysterium. You followed us on Instagram and Twitter at Mysterium Bros. You've gone to the brothersmysterium.com official site, and you've liked our videos on youtube.com/The Brothers Mysterium. So thank you. And also thank you to Howl Acapella, amazing group consisting of Allie Reeves and Honor Freiberg. They did that custom Lizzie Borden creepy song for us. We want to thank them. Great group. You can check them out at facebook.com/Howl Acapella, HOWLACAPPELLA. Also, howlacapella.com, and on Twitter at Howl Acapella. Great group, great song, and a creepy song.
Hell yeah.
And speaking of creepy, do you remember in our childhood home on our refrigerator a magnet for the Lizzie Borden house?
I do actually. Yes. It was a picture of the house.
It had her face on it.
Right. And it wasn't an actual photo of the house, right? It was like a
drawing.
Right. Right.
Why was that there?
I don't know.
I don't think either of our parents ever went there.
Huh.
Who knows? But that was my introduction to Lizzie Borden.
I believe it was probably mine too, because I definitely asked questions about things I saw on the fridge.
It was weird, and then you hear the legend, the song, obviously the rhyme, Lizzie Borden took an axe, and you just know the name. You know, oh, Lizzie Borden, didn't she kill her parents? And I remember being like, this is a weird magnet to have up here.
Right, like our mom had like the Hale House Magnets, which was like a charity organization started by Mother Hale. And,
yeah, like a Boston Celtics magnet with Larry Bird.
Right, or a I Love Mom magnet made by Eric Mysterium.
With your face in the middle.
That's right, wearing a baseball cap.
Don't know what she did with mine if I ever made one, but I guess it got thrown away.
And then right in the mix, good old Lizzie Borden.
So whatever, but a lot of us know of her, but do we know the history of her or the home that is allegedly haunted? One misconception, it's not haunted by her, although some might say it is, more so her dead parents.
Yes, stepmother and father.
Correct. And we'll get into the history of it, but we'll also be talking to three individuals who have gone there and visited: Ashley, Meaghan, And it says here, Eric Mysterium?
That's right.
Our very first fresh on the scene overnight ghost tour. I did visit the haunted jail in Charleston, which we talked about in our episode on skepticism. Not a lot happened, but a cool place to go and check out. But you and your wife actually spent the night there, so we'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about Lizzie Borden. Who was Lizzie Andrew Borden? Well, let me tell you. She was born July 19th, 1860 in Fall River, Mass. to Sarah Anthony Morse, her maiden name was Morse, to Andrew Jackson Borden. She was the youngest of 3 kids. She had an older sister, Emma, who was 10 years older. Alice Esther was the middle child, died in infancy, and then there was Lizzie, and her mother, Sarah, her biological mother, passed away when Lizzie was 2. So, being a 10-year difference, Lizzie looked up to Emma more like kind of a mother than a sister. 3 years after the death of Lizzie Borden's mother, when Lizzie was 5, her father Andrew married Abby Gray, making Abby Lizzie's stepmom. A lot of people say it was not a love match. It was more sort of a thing at the time where you have 3 kids, you need a wife. Abby was in her 30s. She was kind of a spinster. So they kind of, due to the social norms, got married.
Borden had a lot of money, too.
Had a lot of money. He was a banker. And Fall River in the 1890s was a very posh place. But what's interesting is they lived well below their means. They had no running water, no electricity or gaslight. It was water pumps and kerosene lamps. And actually, Lizzie was sort of envious of all these other families living up on, quote-unquote, the hill, who had this money and they spent it. She wanted to be fancy, have the finer things, live that posh life. But her dad gave her a very kind of cheap allowance, was super stingy with money, even though they did have a good amount of money. He was also kind of a strict father. She didn't really have much of a social life. It was more church, school, home, not a lot of freedoms. Keep this all in mind. She actually felt neglected as a child, as a young woman even. She was known, she used to shoplift because she always wanted nice things. But to show a side of her father, she would go into a store, steal something, they'd see her steal it, and they'd be like, go send the bill to her dad. And he would actually pay it and kind of let it slide. And they said that even though there was a lot of kind of tension and she was mad at her dad for being so strict and not letting them live the lavish lifestyle, she did still love him. But there was no love lost between her and Abby, her stepmother. They were never very close. A lot of friction. A lot of people say there was just pure hatred between them. And she actually didn't even call her mom or stepmom. She called her Miss Borden. So kind of a slap in the face. And they say she was kind of a troubled, unhappy woman. She didn't like living at home. There was a lot of tension in the house with her stepmother. She's 32. She's unmarried. She'll probably be stuck at home forever because she wasn't married at that age, and there weren't a lot of opportunities for women. In her diaries, she expressed a lot of feelings of depression and frustration. A little while before the murder, there was a midday break-in where someone went upstairs into Miss Borden's desk where they stole jewelry and $50. The cops came, started an investigation, and about 2 weeks later, Mr. Borden called it off, which everybody thought was unusual. Since then, they locked all the doors. The house was even on more lockdown, but some people kind of speculate maybe Lizzie kind of stole that just to get back at her mom. Then, the day before the murder, everybody got sick in the house. So Abby is like, maybe we ate some bad bread. Lizzie was actually with her best friend, Alice Russell, and she was like, listen, there's this shady guy kind of hanging around. I saw him lurking around in the morning. He was out by the barn. There was that break-in at one point. She's like, I think somebody was trying to poison our milk and everybody got sick. So she was kind of paranoid. That was the day before is when all this went down. The night before these murders were to happen, her uncle, John Morse, who is actually the brother of Lizzie's original biological mother, her real mother, he was in town visiting. He spent the night the next day, the day of the murder. He wakes up, he goes across town to visit some other family. He has breakfast with the dad and Abby. As usual, Lizzie was not known to have breakfast with him, didn't really get along. Emma was actually away at a party, I believe in New Haven. So they have breakfast, he goes off to see other relatives, the dad goes to the bank. Everything's business as usual, The maid shows up, Bridget Sullivan, she's there to clean, she's doing her thing. The mom goes upstairs to make the bed. and is never seen alive again. Then at 11:15, Andrew comes home, a little bit earlier than usual, goes to the side door, and it's locked from the inside. Goes to the front door, his key doesn't work, he starts banging on the door. Bridget the maid comes, starts unlocking the door, and actually hears Lizzie on the landing of the stairs laughing. Andrew comes in, he's like, well, where's Abby? And Lizzie's like, oh, she got a letter, like a note, said somebody was sick, she went to visit them. So he sits down on the sitting room sofa, Mr. Borden that is, falls asleep. Bridget, the maid, goes back upstairs, she's doing her cleaning duties, when suddenly she hears Lizzie screaming. She rushes down the stairs, they call the police, police records show at 11:15 they were called for the murder. Cops roll in, find Andrew dead on the sofa, still bleeding from his wounds. He was pretty crushed up in the face. Pretty gruesome scene.
Yeah.
Crowd gathers outside, a lot of drama, everybody's like, what's going on? They then find Miss Borden face down upstairs on the floor next to the bed. Back of her head also caved in. There's possibly about an hour and a half, 2 hours between the two murders, from when Abby was killed to when Andrew was killed. So that was August 4th, 1892. They're both killed. 11 chops to the husband, 19 to the stepmother. And the cops did observe that Lizzie was taking it very well. She was not too excited. She didn't faint, which was common of women at the time. Didn't seem too panicked by the whole thing. So then comes the suspects. Suspect number 1, the uncle, John Morse, but had an airtight alibi. He was across town. He knew every trolley, train, whatever route he took. He could prove it all. Plus, he was with other family members at that time. Couldn't have been there. Suspect 2, they think it was the maid. But Bridget Sullivan had no motive. She'd been there forever. They're like, that doesn't add up. Then they're like, what if it was a robber, one of these shady dudes that were hanging around, spotted, but nothing was stolen? No theft. They're like, this was too brutal to just be a random attack. Was not a stranger. Suspect number 4, some sort of business enemy. The dad was a banker. He's denying loans. He's pissing people off. But then they said, again, why would a business enemy kill Abby, his wife? She's innocent. And why would they kill her and then wait an hour and a half, 2 hours for him to come home just to try to kill him? How could somebody have done that with the maid and Lizzie home? They did not initially think of Lizzie Borden as the murderer because she's a woman. Women were only known to poison people and do soft crime. This was too heinous. Plus, no bloodstains on her. It just kind of was unheard of at the time. But then time goes by, and they're like, you know what? We think it was Lizzie. Pull her in for an inquest, which is when they're questioning people. And there's a couple problems here. One is she claims that she was in the kitchen or the dining room when her mom died. And then she said she was in the barn when her dad died, where she was looking for lead to make some fishing anchors.
Right.
She later changed that story and said she was in the barn looking for lead to fix a screen. Police went to the barn, and there was absolutely no footprints in the hay dust. They knew no one was in the barn. There's also the suspicious story of the note, where Lizzie's like, oh, somebody came and gave her a note and that her friend was ill, so she went to visit the friend. Meanwhile, she was upstairs the whole time. Nobody else can verify that anybody stopped by with a note. Seems like she might be lying.
Mm-hmm.
People do say, though, that Lizzie was on drugs to calm her down during this inquest, so maybe she didn't know what she was saying, or that's why she was acting weird, her story didn't match up, but there was definitely some suspicious inconsistencies. Another thing of note, a pharmacist, the local druggist Eli Bent, said Lizzie tried to buy poison she claimed to clean a sealskin cape the very day before. He didn't give it to her. 2 other witnesses also verified seeing her there trying to buy it. This was the day before the murders, but they said, well, nobody used poison, so it doesn't add up.
Well, maybe if she couldn't get the poison, she got desperate.
Well, exactly.
Good old Plan B.
So then, August 11th, 1892, she was arrested for both murders. And when the time came, she entered the plea not guilty. And what's interesting is a lot of people, especially like her church friends, thought they were ruining her reputation. It was absurd. How could she do this? She's never been violent. She's a good church-going woman. She's being persecuted. It's outrageous. As where other people in town were like, yeah, she could have done this. She never liked her parents. She's kind of a weirdo. And they believe it. Which brings us to the trial, which took place in New Bedford, Mass, June 5th, 1893. They said she was calm, poised, didn't seem to fear the guilty verdict, which would have meant she would have been hung. And they said she was actually almost like faking some of her emotions and asking her lawyers like how she should respond to things, which raised an eyebrow. And during this trial, a lot of things came to light, including her best friend, Alice Russell, who you might remember she was with the day before, claiming...
The sick friend, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, she was telling her, like, well, everybody's
Supposedly
poisoned,
sick.
I'm worried, there's a guy hanging around. So her own best friend shows up and talks about Lizzie holding a dress, saying she was going to burn it because it was covered in paint, to which many people say that was probably blood and she was getting rid of it after committing these murders. Other people said that Lizzie did change her dress while all this was happening. A lot of neighbors came over and stuff, and there were some reports of people saying she was wearing a different dress than she changed when the cops came. And the cops, of course, never looked under her dress to see if she put a new dress on over it or even went through her belongings, because it was unseemly for a man to go through a woman's possessions at the time, so not the best police work I've ever heard of.
No.
Then there was a police matron while Lizzie was in jail. Her sister Emma, who was her 10-year-older sort of mother-like figure in her life, was visiting her in the jail, and the woman, the prison matron, said she heard this real scuffle of anger, yelling at each other, where Lizzie said, "You have given me away, Emma, but I won't give in," which was basically her saying, you know, I did it and you ratted me out.
You sold me out.
But Emma denied that ever happening during the trial, so it's a he said, she said, kind of hard to use. They did also find a handleless hatchet in the basement of the house covered in white ash, as if it had been cleaned, or someone was maybe trying to disguise it and make it look old, maybe even tried burning it. And then they did the rare thing at the time of exhuming the bodies, removing the heads, boiling off the flesh, and then getting that handleless hatchet and kind of matching it. It wasn't a perfect match, but it did go into the holes in both their scalps, Abby and Andrew.
I believe they did right there in the dining room.
Very brutal. And supposedly, when she heard about it, or they pulled him out at the trial even, Lizzie swooned, and some said it was very staged and dramatic and overly acted, where she went, oh, and
Making up for the fact that she didn't pass out the first time, maybe?
exactly, and trying to play it up like, oh, goodness. But it was, you know, it was like the OJ trial at the time. A lot of media attention with this barbaric, heinous, brutal murder by this young woman killing her parents.
And actually, the second time in history that forensic photography or crime scene photography had been used. I'm sure many people are familiar with the famous photos of Mr. Borden's head being smashed in, and then also her stepmother's body laying at the side of the bed there.
Absolutely.
Do you know what the first time photography was used in a murder case was?
Abe Lincoln.
That was my guess too, but no.
William Henry Harrison.
No. It's murders that took place around the same time in another country.
Archduke Ferdinand.
Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper. Another murder mystery. Who was Jack the Ripper? We'll get into that later. So also people said, well, it's controversial. A lot of this is all controversy and conspiracy theories. But Emma and Lizzie offered a $5,000 reward for anybody who could find and convict the killer, which some people said it was sort of a over-the-top PR move because they knew they would never pay it, because they knew that Lizzie was the killer, but it was trying to make these two daughters that were so wounded, you know, hungry to find their parents' killer. They also ran ads asking for whoever it was that sent Abby the note about the ill friend, please come forward so we can verify it. No one ever came forward. And then there's the account that Lizzie was never violent. She had no criminal history. She did like her father, so some people were like, well, she's an upstanding citizen. You know, she always acted appropriately and stuff, but maybe she didn't like her mother, but why kill the father? You know, there were strangers seen around the Borden home. Was it somebody else? There's all these different theories. People at the time didn't quite understand what was happening. They also started theorizing, maybe Lizzie did do this, but how did she change so quickly? Maybe she killed them both in the nude and then quickly washed up and threw on a giant dress. Other people say and this is an interesting one, maybe she wore her father's long Prince Albert jacket as almost an apron. And it's interesting because the coat was shoved under his head on the sofa.
Oh, so his blood would have been on it anyway.
Exactly. So that's kind of not a bad theory for these armchair detectives of the time.
Interesting.
Then the defense called their star witness, Emma Borden, the older sister. She, as I mentioned, said she never had that argument in jail. That was all made up. She said that Lizzie was always cordial with Abby, got along with her stepmother, which is not very true from every other account. And she also said Lizzie did burn a dress, but she did it because Emma said, hey, you have paint on it. It's ruined. You might as well burn it. So she said, not only did I watch her burn it, I told her,
She suggested.
you might as well do it. Verdict came back, not guilty. So while she was innocent in the eyes of the law, the court of the public, not so much. She was pretty much ostracized forever. It's hard, even when you're found innocent, it's hard for people to believe you.
Well, that's similar, like you said, the OJ case at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she returns to town, like a week later, goes to church where her family owned a pew. She sat there and every pew around it, all the rows were empty. She got the hint, you're not welcome at the church. But she was very stubborn, strong-willed, so she refused to leave town. She didn't want to, give in. But what she did do was sell the house, the Lizzie Borden house.
True.
She went and bought a huge mansion with her sister called Maplecroft. And then she started kind of unofficially dubbing herself. She started calling herself Elizabeth Andrew Borden.
Lisbeth, I believe.
Lisbeth, rather than Lizzie. Or called herself Elizabeth of Maplecroft to kind of shed that name and terrible reputation. Did not really work. But she definitely did start to buy things, travel more, go to the theater a lot, live a much more lavish lifestyle, have servants.
Made a lot of donations, I believe, to
animal shelters.
Yes, animal shelters, yeah.
She loved animals more than people. But it was sort of a lonely life because all of her friends faded away. Nobody in town wanted her. She sort of had a scarlet letter on her. And even her dear, dear older sister, Emma, who was kind of mousy, quiet, was not into this huge extravagant lifestyle, and they might have had or clearly had some sort of falling out because Emma moves out of the mansion, moves away, changes her name, and never spoke to her sister again. But interestingly enough, even in her own diaries and letters and talking with people who knew her, she always defended her sister's innocence until her dying day. So whatever rift they had that caused her to move out of Maplecroft Mansion, she still said, well, she didn't kill my parents.
Unrelated. Side issue.
And the news kind of kept tabs on her anyway. The tabloids, anytime there was the anniversary of the murder, they would do stories. They would follow Lizzie around. There were rumors. She was getting married. She was doing this. It was always headline news.
Which she never did get married.
She never did. But any rumor that came up, they would cover it. So they kind of hounded her forever. She did eventually die, still living in Fall River on the hill where she always wanted to be, on June 1st, 1927, at the age of 67.
Which...
Keep in mind, 9 days after that, her sister Emma died.
That's pretty crazy.
Interestingly.
Hard to believe also, Aunt F was 4 years old at the time when Lizzie Borden died.
Aunt F, our dear, dear sweet neighbor, mind you.
It's always mind-blowing to me how much
she's been alive
for.
Yeah, it's crazy. So as you had mentioned, when she died, she left $30,000 to the Animal Rescue League of Fall River. She left some money to the few loyal friends she had and some servants, $500 to the city to take care of her father's grave, an interesting move, as she always loved her father, even though he was stingy and disciplined and didn't give her money, but she possibly killed him, so who knows. And without knowing her sister would die just 9 days later, she left her sister Emma nothing. Drama! So that is the story of the abridged version of Lizzie, the history of her family, the murders in the house. So, and people still argue, well, it was the uncle, he was trying to borrow money and there. So there's all these theories, but most people are sort of in agreement that Lizzie probably did it.
Yeah.
And now the house, the original house, not Maplecroft Manor, the house where she grew up, where the murders took place, is a bed and breakfast.
It is, yeah.
With a haunted twist.
It is. Just some minor, also some minor
facts,
inclusions into your story. Yeah, some other facts.
Inclusions.
So, Lizzie was then buried at Oak Grove Cemetery, which is where her father's grave is, and it does say Lisbeth on her very small, modest headstone, not Lizzie, because again, she went by Elizabeth till she died. Also, a lot of people don't know this, but about 20 years before the murder of Mr. and Mrs. Borden, Mr. Andrew Borden's uncle's wife, which he had 4 of them, actually murdered, I don't know, I think it was 3 of her children, and then killed herself.
Yikes.
And before she killed herself, were you going to throw this in there?
No, but go for it.
Before she killed herself, she apparently shoved the dead corpses of her children into a cistern or a well and left them there. And this was apparently in close proximity to the house, which is the Lizzie Borden house now, because people claim to, amongst many of the ghosts that are supposedly in that house, are these dead children, which are in one of the upstairs rooms.
Interesting. And now I always wonder, as we've said many times, why would these dead children choose to haunt a house that wasn't the house they grew up in?
Right.
Or wouldn't they be haunting the well where they met their demise? Why would they be like, well, there's some other ghosts of family members here, so let's go here.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's more of a tourist attraction or not. But
I think so. I think it's kind of like a something that people kind of just cram together as part of the whole legend.
Package deal, package ghost haunting. But we did talk to a few other people that have ventured and spent a night at the Lizzie Borden house.
Yes, we did. Let's have a listen.
The Brothers Mysterium.
Okay, so as you heard Tommy and I say during our opening banter, my wife and I went and stayed at the Lizzie Borden house a few years back.
You have reached the destination. The destination is on the left.
Along with my experience, we also have stories from 2 other listeners. Ashley.
My name is Ashley. I'm 32 and I'm from upstate New York.
And Meaghan.
Hello, Brothers Mysterium. My name is Meaghan. I'm from the Bronx, New York.
We all visited what's now officially called the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum at separate times. I went in August of 2015.
I visited the Lizzie Borden house on April 23rd, 2017, with 3 friends of mine.
I had gone to the Lizzie Borden house in June of 2012. I got the overnight stay as a graduation present. I just graduated from college.
When my wife and I arrived, there was this unsettling, contrasting vibe, because it's a very cozy looking house and it pretty much operates like any of your typical New England B&B style inns.
It's not like an enormous house or anything. It's definitely very quaint.
It's a very quaint, little bed and breakfast.
But constantly lurking in the back of my mind, I knew I was standing in the exact location of one of the earliest and definitely most savage murder scenes in American history.
If you didn't know where you were, you would have no idea what happened there. It would just be like a normal old place.
As Tommy explained in that brief history lesson, after the murders, Lizzie and Emma never returned to live in the house at 92 2nd Street. But for 26 years after the murder, they still owned the property. They just leased it as a rental. In 1918, they finally sell it. And for the next 20 or so years, the house changes hands a few more times. In about 1940, a separate building that operates as a commercial printing press is attached to the southern side of the original Borden house. The site functions as a printing press business/home for over 50 years, and you can imagine the place has changed quite a bit from the 1890s. It's not until 1996 that it finally opens up as a bed and breakfast spot. And in 2005, the printing press structure was demolished, as the owners began to restore the house back to what it looked like almost 115 years prior. So, unfortunately, this means that none of the furniture is original. Yeah, I know. Even that sweet Victorian sofa where Mr. Borden was found dead, that's not the original either.
Everything's replicated, but it's like exactly the same.
The owners have done a damn good job with the replication, though. But anyway, just like a typical bed and breakfast, guests check in. But here, they kind of then hang out, waiting for the tour of the house to begin.
So we got in there, it was fine. We put our bags down, drank wine. Tour wasn't starting until 7 o'clock. So we actually just went across the street there was like a tap room, and we ended up getting a bite to eat and some drinks, kind of ease into the night.
I myself didn't ease into the night the same way as Ashley and her friends did while they were waiting for the tour to begin. Instead, I announced myself to be the co-host of a podcast, got everyone's permission to record openly, and then I took some time to chat with the guests and the staff to kind of gauge where everyone stood on their paranormal beliefs. Like Rick here. Okay, so you're in the house and you say you feel...
Nothing.
Nothing. Have you ever had any paranormal experiences in your life?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Okay, so are you a skeptic of the paranormal?
I've been brought up, and all of my life experiences have put me into the place that I need technical evidence and proof of everything.
Right.
So I'm skeptical to the point of proof. I know I need to learn more.
So you said you've had paranormal experiences, though. Did you rationalize that and say it was...
No.
Okay.
So that's why there's still curiosity.
Okay.
I saw a little girl 7 times in one evening.
And then was it unusual sightings, or?
It's the only time I've ever seen that.
Yeah. Huh. All right. So right now in the house, you say nothing. You don't expect anything.
I believe that there is probably a firm technical explanation for almost everything, if not everything, that occurs. And whatever's left, there might be something there.
Okay.
I've never been presented with a situation where I didn't think that I couldn't investigate it further and find something to prove that there's a technical reason for something to happen.
So it's the last option for you, but it's still technically an option, the paranormal. Okay. I also met some guests who definitely weren't rookies when it comes to overnighting at the Lizzie Borden house. A girl I met named Stacy and her mother were on their 5th visit, and they had some supernatural experiences during some of these prior stays. Does anyone have... Because you've been here 4 times already, you said, right?
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
You've had a lot of experiences here, both of you? Yeah. Can you...
When we tried recording...
Stacy and her mom are telling me about some experiences and EVPs they captured in the house. As always, for the sake of potential newcomers, an EVP is an electronic voice phenomenon. Basically, it's a ghost's voice caught on a recording which wasn't heard by the naked ear at the time at which the recording was captured.
And then I said, well, I don't know what to do. Should we just ask questions? And so my mom said, if there's anybody there, and then it cuts out and you can't hear it. It's like muffled. But if you guys want to hear that recording from the kids' room, I do have it.
Sure.
If you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. This particular happening took place in one of the upstairs rooms, believed to be haunted by the children of Eliza Darling Borden, Lizzie Borden's great aunt. And the woman whom I mentioned earlier had killed her children and stuffed their bodies in a well.
I played it for these guys earlier, but
I wish I had You have to listen and turn it up, Stace.
That is up. It's very faint. It's hard to hear, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I like the giggling at the end. Wow. I thought I had a cleaner version of this EVP that Stacy had emailed me, but when I looked back, I couldn't find it. She did, however, have another video which she claims captured an EVP, and this one you can kind of hear based off my recording of her recording.
And then I have a video of us going up the stairs. And this is not me. My fiance's name, his name is Steve. And you can see everything is blurry, but my camera takes really good pictures. And so you can't really hear what we're saying. And then it cracks and you can hear what we're saying. And then you hear somebody say Stephen, but honest to God, it was not me. So now you can hear it.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, and that was not me.
That's creepy. Here's a quick playback, and just a heads up. I boosted the volume and EQ just to make it easier for you, the listeners, to hear. The staff of the house that were on the job during my visit were of mixed opinions on whether or not the house was haunted. For instance, a staff member named Tim, with whom I spoke, was a little more on the skeptical side.
I don't believe in actual paranormal experiences, but I am open-minded to it.
And you said you've had none in this house?
Nope, none in this house.
And none
None at all in general. Well,
Yeah.
there's a few things, but nothing that I say is paranormal because I see the human factor in it. So that's about it.
All right, cool. Thank you, man. His coworker Sue, however, felt differently.
Have a good night.
Take care.
See you tomorrow.
All right, Tim, see ya. Well, the first experience I've ever had in this house was in the parlor. I had just let in 6 daytime guests for a tour. They all sat down, and I was about to start speaking when out of nowhere, a woman spoke right in my ear, very loud and very clearly, and all the guests heard her too. And nobody else was in the house at that time. That was kind of creepy.
You said it sounded like you thought she said something similar to your name, right?
Yes,
Sue,
it was 2 words. I didn't quite catch it because I wasn't expecting to hear anybody, but the second word was either you or tu or Sue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of creepy. I've been touched in different rooms in this house. I hear voices a lot. I'll walk into that room and the voice stops, or I do a lot of investigating in the house also, so I run my recorder.
Right.
And I actually caught a voice on my recorder answering a question I had asked. Sitting there wearing Victorian clothing, I asked, do you like me wearing Lizzie's dress? And a male voice responded saying, it's not.
Because it wasn't actually...
It was not actually
her
Lizzie's dress. So
right.
I just said, oh yeah, you're right, it's not.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And you said you were a skeptic at one point in your life.
Yeah.
So, and did this house change that for you?
Oh, it absolutely did. Because this is where I really had most of my paranormal experiences.
Right. Have you had any experiences anywhere else?
Just once when I was a kid in Oak Grove Cemetery.
Oh, which is where the Bordens are buried.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
interesting. Now, as far as the entities in the house go, do you feel that it's Lizzie or is it Mr. and Abby Borden?
I believe it's a variety of people in this house.
Okay.
Because like I said, I do investigations,
Right.
and a lot of the things I'll ask is, who am I speaking to?
Right.
Well, I do get answers. And I've been answered I was speaking to Lizzie, I was speaking to Abby at one point, and Mr. Borden is very verbal in his house. Yeah. So I've had encounters with all 3 of those.
Interesting. So you would say 100% you are a believer?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Eventually, during my visit, the tour began, as it did for Meaghan and Ashley on their visits.
So we got back, and the tour started at 7. I believe the tour guide's name was Rick.
They took all of us and gave us the grand tour of the house. This is where all the ghost stories come into play and all the, I guess, like, anecdotes of rumors and things that happened with that story.
The tour was, like, super detailed, really involved. He got into the history of everything. The tour lasted 3 hours. I mean, and the house is not that big.
The woman that was working that night, her name was Robin, and she was very, very nice. We're actually still friends on Facebook. So she took us around the house, and they showed us outside where they found the hatchet buried. That's hanging, the murder weapon, or the weapon believed to be the murder weapon is hanging in the house. Showed us where that was found, took us into each bedroom and told us like all the different gory details of what happened, all the ghost stories that people told them that happened, or things that they themselves had experienced.
The attic freaking creeped me out, the 3rd floor. Like, when we had the tour, like, I thought it was so creepy up there.
And then they took us to the basement.
The staff requested that I not record the actual tour, which I totally understand and I completely abided by during the official presentation. There was, however, one brief moment where they lifted this rule.
They said that, like, if you can't see it with your naked eye, but if you take a picture with the flash, there's like a skull thing like a skull will appear on the wall in like the dirt and the grit.
Ready? Right on the back, right?
Put on your flashlight.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God, Richard, take a picture for me, please.
Whoa. Did you see it?
I still have the picture. It definitely resembles a skull. I don't necessarily know if I believe that it's a skull because you know, somebody was hacked to death there and there's like angry spirits there, or if it's just a skull because that's a coincidence that happened, like mold or something formed in the shape of a skull. I don't know.
Like Meg, I still also have the photo I took, which you can see on our social media sites and thebrothersmysterium.com.
So after the tour, you know, Rick ended up leaving, and of course, you know, they they have the Ouija boards downstairs that are all like waiting for you to use them, and they kind of like set it up for you to experience things or to try things out. Of course, I wanted nothing to do with the Ouija board; those terrify me as well.
And then they also do a seance with a Ouija board.
Now, when I visited the LBHB&B, there was no official seance like Meg just mentioned from her visit. I think the type of events that branch off from the tour kind of depend on when you go. Anyway, the post-tour for me was more like Ashley's visit, where the spirit boards and Ouija boards were just kind of inconspicuously hanging out in the parlor. I was actually warned very sternly by another guest against using it in her presence. And as we know all too well, people are either completely freaked out by the Ouija board or skeptical to a pretty fixed degree. But I suppose that may also come down to the skill of whoever is using the board.
Yeah, that was a little hokey for me because it seemed very rehearsed, like they had done it before. But there was a weird turn in the seance where it came out like that this woman was talking to Lizzie Borden's spirit, and Lizzie Borden was implying to this woman, or Lizzie Borden's spirit, quote unquote, was implying to this woman that her father was molesting her and her sister, and the mother or stepmother knew about it, and that's why she killed him, or them. And that's why they planned all of this, and that their uncle was involved in it. And like there was just it was a little nutso to watch.
At a certain point in the night, the staff leaves, and the guests are left alone in the house until morning. Before Sue, the last of the staff to leave, went home, she assured us that all the guests were checked in. So before bed, we were all accounted for and just kind of hanging out in the parlor. Again, the same parlor where Mr. Borden was brutally hacked to death. While hanging out, I tried to capture some EVPs and orb photography with Stacy and others. For a while, nothing happens. And though it's pretty much inaudible on this recording, we suddenly heard footsteps right above us.
Alright, I really don't know who that was, because the only other person I know is upstairs is my husband, and he's in Lizzie's room, which is right above us.
Is somebody here?
He didn't go outside, did he? No, we were heard him go down.
He was laying like
There you go.
Hello?
Most people kind of moved into the center of the room where, as for me, I grabbed my recorder and went right upstairs. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Who's that?
I'm the lady up here in this room.
Oh, okay. You're staying here tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We just heard someone come in and we weren't sure who it was, so.
Oh.
All right.
Sorry.
No problem.
Not the ghost.
Huh? We all got a little excited. Yeah, it turns out, false alarm. Just a late arrival. So there was one lady who was a no-show, and I remember actually talking to Sue out in the parking lot, and she said she hadn't spoken to that lady, and she just arrived, so
okay.
she's just super late. Anyway, after a period of hanging out, some guests go up to bed. Others play around with some of the Lizzie-related stuff that's just kind of hanging out in the sitting room, like books and whatnot.
So we ended up putting in a DVD of, they had like a Lizzie Borden DVD there, and it was like a movie or about the case. I think it had the woman from Bewitched, that show, like from back in the 60s, like she starred as Lizzie Borden or whatever.
Mrs. Churchill, do come in. Someone has killed Father.
We ended up getting bored like kind of halfway through the movie. We went upstairs. We brought our own, one of my friends brought these like oracle cards, so we kind of did those.
This is also the point in the night in which some guests, or at least those brave enough, embrace their curiosity and start trying to make contact with spirits.
I brought an EVP player with me, a digital recorder. We let it run. We asked questions, but we didn't end up getting anything. Like, I played that thing back like 5 times when we got home, and we got nothing.
Again, with the staff gone and the exception of those rooms occupied by other guests, one more or less has access to the entire house. During my visit, I was all over, in the basement and the room supposedly haunted by the other murdered Borden kids, but I didn't experience anything. Ashley and her friends, however, may have had a quick brush with the other side.
The only thing that happened while we were there that I experienced, and my friend Heather, who was sitting next to me, so we're all hanging out in the room, and my 2 friends, Meaghan and Christina, they decide they want to go up to the attic and they want to go exploring the house, and it's about, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning at this time, and I'm like, I am not going up to the 3rd floor, like, hell no. So they go off on their own, and me and Heather are in the room, and we just heard this, like, loud bang, like, outside of our door, and, like, Christina and Meaghan, they were downstairs at this point, and they were just walking around with flashlight, exploring things, going through things. They brought the EVP player with them, so Heather and I are like, what the hell was that? So we sent them a text message. They sent us one back, and they were like, yeah, we heard that too. And so they came back upstairs not too long after, and we hung out a little bit longer, tried some more EVPs, didn't get anything. I think we ended up going to sleep sleep in quotations, around 3:30. I refused to sleep with the lights off because I was scared. So after that loud bang, we left a little light on, and we laid down, and of course I got choppy. The beds are old. It wasn't my bed. I was freaked out anyways.
Ashley's experience with the loud bang may have been a ghost, but in an unfamiliar house with strangers all over, it's expected that unexpected things may happen. Was it a ghost? Maybe. Maybe not. Meg, on the other hand, experienced a little more direct and disturbing of a happening.
Anyway, so yeah, we decided to retire for the night, and I brought my laptop and, my digital camera, brought my cell phone, different things just to kind of keep me entertained, DVDs. So I was a little freaked out that night because, again, we're staying in this house where these murders took place, and there's just ghost stories running rampant in the world from this place. So I knew I wasn't going to go to sleep that night because I was scared. And I'd never really felt scared in a haunted place before, because I fully believe that places are haunted, that they hold on to energies or spirits or whatever people want to call them. But I grew up in a haunted house that it didn't scare me the way that this house scared me. When I walked into the house, I had a little bit of a weird vibe, but I wasn't sure that it wasn't something that I was putting, on myself, because I was already weird about going there, But so I knew I wasn't going to go to sleep, so I brought all this shit to entertain me, and I put on I think it was Legally Blonde. I popped in the DVD on my laptop, and I started watching it with my headphones in. And around 11:30, 11:30, and the person I was with was already asleep. He was sleeping, and I thought he was nuts because I didn't understand how he could go to sleep there. But anyway, he was asleep, and I wasn't asleep. And all of a sudden, I had my headphones on, keep in mind. So I was watching this movie on my laptop screen. I had my headphones on. I couldn't really hear anything. I couldn't see anything in the dark other than what I'm watching because the light was so bright from my laptop. And all of a sudden, I feel what was a vibration. And I just kind of thought for a second, it's just him moving, and that's that. So I let it go. It stopped, and I let it go. 2 minutes later, I felt it again, And this time I knew that it wasn't that, because it was pretty, it wasn't him. I knew it wasn't him because it was on the headboard. It wasn't in the bed. It was on the headboard behind me. So I take my headphones out, I turn on the light, and I'm looking around to see what it is. And I'm kind of perched up against the headboard, and I can still feel it happening. I look to the door to my right. I look to my right at the door that's against the same wall as the headboard to her father's room. And the doorknob is like rattling. Like I can see it rattling. I can hear it and I can see it rattling. And that's what I felt. And the door was moving, like it was freaking me out. So I shook the person I was with awake. I shook him awake, and I said, you have to look at the door. I said, look at the door. And he turns around and he sees it, and he pops up and he goes, holy shit. And I was like, dude, something's going on, like check that door. So at this point, there was like a hook and latch lock on our side of the door, keeping that from opening. So we both get up, and we're standing in front of the door now watching this happen. This had been going on for, I guess, about like 5 minutes now. It had to be like 5 minutes. And we're looking at the door, and I said, if that hook latch wasn't there, like, what would we be doing right now? We would be like totally and he was like, nah, it's fine. And he went and he opened the hook latch, and it stopped. Nothing from that door, just completely stopped. So there was nobody in that bedroom, by the way. The 2 bedrooms that were in our bedroom, there was nobody else in there. It was just on our floor. It was just a couple in the John Morse bedroom beside our bedroom. So he decides to open the door to her father's bedroom, which is the door that was rattling. Opens the door. It's pitch black in there. There's nothing going on. I mean, there's light coming in from, the window on the outside, but that's it. So he said, all right, there's nothing in here. I guess he said something insulting to the father. He said, I guess the dad was just a or something like that. Something along, he definitely called him a and we had been instructed not to insult the family in any way, because the woman who was giving us the tour, Robin, had told us that she insulted him one day, with calling him like a punk or something like that, insinuating he had no guts. And she said that her hair was pulled so hard that she fell backwards. So whatever. He calls him a and when that happened, the light in that bedroom flicked on. This was not like a flick light. This wasn't like a switch light on the wall. It was a I don't even know what they're called, like the ones you turn, like an oil lamp, you have to turn it, but it was like an electric oil lamp. So you had to turn it on, like it had to go and turn itself on. So that was terrifying for me. There was nobody in there. So I was like, we slammed the door, locked it with that hook and latch, and then I was freaking out. So of course I couldn't go to sleep that night, like at all. So I was watching movies all night, and from time to time I would hear like knocking on that door. The doorknob would rattle this went on throughout the night. Like, there was knocking on the door, it was rattling. At one point, I heard a woman and a man talking to each other. It sounded like they were arguing, like their voices were getting a bit more aggressive. And from where I was, it sounded like it was coming from that father's bedroom behind that wall that we were up against. And I opened the bedroom door to see if not that our Lizzie's bedroom door that went kind of to the John Morse bedroom and the hallway and the staircase of the main house, and I didn't hear anything. It wasn't like, I couldn't hear it from out there. I could hear it from in my bedroom. So, but again, there was also people upstairs, so I could have just been hearing somebody upstairs fighting with each other. I'm not totally sure. But I was convinced it was coming from the bedroom behind us that nobody was in. So whatever. Eventually, I had fallen asleep somewhere, somehow. Whatever. At 3:31 a.m., I woke up in like an extreme panic. And when I say panic, I mean like full-blown anxiety attack, scared for my life, had to get out of there at that second. So I woke up the person I was with, and I was crying, I was sweating, I was dizzy, like I've never been that scared before, or it was just something that I've never experienced. So I woke this person up in this state of panic, and he looked at me like he wanted to murder me. That's what it looked like. His face was like contorted into this mean, angry look that I'd never seen from him before. And he was an angry dude, but he was never like that. He like, it scared the shit out of me. So he called me a which he had never done before. And we were together for like 3 years at this point. Some nasty fights, and that he had never called me a before, but called me a and told me he was going to throw me out the window if I ever woke him up again. Like real weird, scary shit. Told me to shut my mouth and go back to sleep and stop being a baby about it, basically. So I never went back to sleep. He like passed out back again as soon as his head hit the pillow. He was done, like out again. So me scared shitless that this person next to me who I knew and who I thought I had loved or loved me or whatever, I thought he was going to kill me if I said another word. So I shut up. And that's that. The next morning, as soon as the sun arose, like I was up and dressed and ready to go. I would not take a shower in that place because I didn't want to be vulnerable. Like didn't want to be like stuck in the shower naked and have like a ghost appear right in front of me or whatever. Anyway, so like after breakfast, I went upstairs and got my shit, and I was waiting for the person I was with to, get his shit together because I wanted to get the out of there. So I bring my shit downstairs and I go outside to have a cigarette. I'm a smoker, don't judge me. So I go out to have a cigarette, and the lady who was in the John Morse room where the mother was murdered on our floor was out there smoking too. So we get to talking about our night, and I start telling her, the things that happened, and how he woke up, or I woke up in a panic and, in the middle of the night, and he was really mean. And she said, that's weird. She was like, that same exact thing happened to us. Like, she was like, I woke up at 3:31 and she was like, I was so panicked that I felt like I nearly ran out the front door. And when I talked to my husband about it, he told me that he was going to slice my throat. And I stopped dead in my tracks just because I feel like this might sound crazy, but I feel like this is something that happens often there, because the dad must be very, very angry about what happened. And Lizzie and her sister must have been very scared of their parents, just in general. So I feel like it's like an energy thing there, where males tend to take on the energy of the angry father that's left there, and women might take on the energy of Lizzie and her sister, or all the women in that family who were just scared,
So, yeah, I didn't experience anything, but it was my first time kind of going around with strangers in a very famously haunted place and being able to really open my mind up to it and kind of say, if something's going to happen, I want it to happen. And I tried to break all the rules to make that happen. I didn't do any taunting because I didn't want to yell too loud and wake anybody up. But, yeah.
So, final question for you.
Sure.
Both Ashley and Meaghan said upon entering the house and staying there, they felt a weird energy. It was definitely haunted. There was a presence. Did you feel that as well?
Yes, but not that I say it was definitely haunted or there was a presence, but there definitely was, from my perspective, this excitement about where it's a famous house. And of course, when you think it's haunted, and again, I've never had a ghost experience. I wouldn't say I believe in ghosts, but I'm always looking for that moment where it might potentially happen. So there is that little part in me that's like, keep in mind, there could be something here.
And I guess even just any place where there's been a murder, it has that vibe of
right.
Oh wow, something did happen here. So just knowing that,
right,
you enter it with your own
and
bias before even getting there.
Yeah, so definitely the seed was planted in my mind, but I wouldn't say that I definitely felt 100% like there was something watching me. So,
well, that is the Brothers Mysterium take on Lizzie Borden and the Lizzie Borden house. Taking us out now one more time, Howl a cappella.
Indeed.
Then greedy stepmom came along. And that's when Lizzie's head went wrong. To take a life's a big decision. But Dad should not have killed her pigeons. An eye for an eye, she softly cooed, as her axe split his eye in two.
Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, gave her father 41. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, gave her father 41.
Get the hatchet. They deserve it.
Clips heard in this episode come from The Legend of Lizzie Borden from 1975, produced by Paramount Television and distributed by ABC and CBS Television Distribution. Narcissus by Columbia Orchestra, published in 1900. A big thank you goes out to Tim and Sue from the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum, and a big thank you to the members of Howl A Cappella. That is Allie Reeves and Honor Freiberg. They put their own spin on the classic Lizzie Borden song for us for this episode. If you want to hear more of Howl A Cappella, you can check them out at facebook.com/howlacapella, on Twitter @howlacapella, or head over to howlacapella.com. That is HOWL Acapella. And of course, if you're checking out bands, don't forget to check out The Never Grin. They do our theme song. If you want to share a story, your thoughts, your experiences at the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum, or at any other bed and breakfast that may or may not be haunted, or you're looking for a recommendation of a bed and breakfast for a romantic, haunted getaway for you and your girlfriend, or you just have a story, a subject, or anything else you want us to do. Has anybody really listened to the credits this far in? I don't know, but if you are listening and you want to get in touch with us, you could do so by emailing us at thebrothersmysterium@gmail.com, hitting us up on social media at Mysterium Bros on Twitter and Instagram, or you can go to our HQ home base website, thebrothersmysterium.com. And as always, we want to thank you for listening to us.